Welcome into episode number 172 of The Voice Behind the Voice. I'm Sean Aronson, the TV and radio broadcaster for the St. Paul Saints, an independent minor league baseball team in the Twin Cities. I have returned from vacation from about 12 days out in California. It's always good to get back home. It's always good to get away after a long season, and this season was, I guess, as long as the one last year, actually probably a day shorter since 2 seasons ago we lost in Game 4 of the championship series, and this year we swept through it. But regardless, it's always good to get away. Everybody in the office does. It's a lot of days to work, and especially more so this year hosting the All-Star Game. But had the opportunity to spend time with my family, see my nieces. I actually went to school with my older niece. It was bring your family to school day for like an hour, and got to hang out at school with my older niece. And then went to the final regular season home game at Dodger Stadium, thanks in part to Dan Grice, our first base coach, and his fiance Yardley Smith. They were kind enough to give me their tickets. And then I spent 4 days up in Sacramento, which was probably the most unique and interesting part of the entire trip, because I went and saw a friend of mine that I've known since preschool, so going on almost 40 years now, which is crazy to think about that. But he and I couldn't be more opposite. And obviously I'm big into sports. He's always been big into animals, always wanted to be a veterinarian, works for a biotech firm up in the Sacramento area, and within the last year bought a house on a couple of acres of land, and always wanted animals. And so he's got a couple of horses, a couple of sheep, 3 goats, about 7 or 8 chickens, a couple of dogs. And I am not a farm person. Maybe that's the best way to put it, which I don't think comes as a shock to anybody. And it was interesting to spend 4 days. Again, it's a hobby farm. He doesn't have these animals to sell or anything like that. But the first full day I was there, we went to a feed store and picked up 12 bales of hay. And by pick up, I mean I didn't lift a finger. The people at the feed store put it into the back of his truck, which the truck is like, I don't know, it was his dad's truck, and the truck's got to be from the mid-'80s, I think. And then when we brought it back to the farm, got unloaded the following day, and again, I did not lift a finger and take it off the truck, and really didn't lift a whole lot of fingers around the farm. But I'm terrified of goats, probably from when I was a child, and you go to the zoo and you go into the petting zoo and the goats would like run into you. So I was terrified of the goats. Took me a little bit of time to get over that. I had a horse come charging at me from about 50 yards away, and I feared for my life. But as my friend said, as it came charging towards me, don't worry, he just wants to meet you. But that's pretty daunting. And then at about 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, I went out for a run, because, there's no gym within, 20 minutes of where they live. So I went out for a run, pitch black outside, and out of the corner of my eye, less than a quarter of a mile into my run, I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I freak out. Turns out it was 3 cows sitting up against the fence just eating, and me freaking out freaked them out, and they made this horrific noise and then bolted and ran the other way. So needless to say that it was an interesting trip, 4 days on the farm, but I am not long for the farm life. But it was good to see him and his family and spend some time overall in California. With that said, let's get to episode number 172. It is Wes Durham of the Atlanta Falcons. Sat down with him right before, I believe it was week 1 that the Vikings played the Falcons. Wes is a guy that has listened to this podcast for a long time. I don't know if he listens to every episode, but he has listened to this podcast almost since the first year. Someone that I've been in contact with to reach out to if I need to get a hold of someone that I just don't have a contact for. He's been tremendous as a resource, and I was excited to finally sit down with him We talk about his dad, who passed away within the last 6 months to a year, and we talk. My favorite stories in this are how he utilized his high school reunions to get 2 different jobs. It's remarkable to listen to him talk about how going to his 10 and I think it was his 20-year high school reunion, how he landed 2 different jobs at each of those reunions. So I'm wondering, like, people from my high school help someone out maybe a little bit, perhaps. But again, he was so kind. We sat down in his hotel room. I think it was late Saturday night, and so they played Sunday afternoon. It was late Saturday night. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night. So great to sit down and chat with Wes. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, you could do so, iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Then be sure to rate us and then follow us on social media, Twitter at The Voice BTV, Facebook, facebook.com/TheVoiceBTV, and you can always email me, thevoicebtv@gmail.com. All right, let's get to it. Episode number 172 with Wes Durham of the Atlanta Falcons. JW, roll the open.
After Spencer Durkin wrote the story in Greensboro, my wife said, "I'm surprised you told that story." I said, "Well, he kind of caught me in a moment of weakness," and I said something about it. Next thing you know, he wants to write about it. My mom thought it was great. Her friends thought it was great. And now people are not expecting it, but they know it's there, sure. So it's going to stay a while. And I've decided that, I'm going to do it all year on television, and then, I'll make another decision, because at some point if he were still alive, He'd be like, "Why you keep doing this?" And so I hear his voice faintly saying, "Okay, yeah, maybe a couple of years, but then you're going to quit it or whatever." So it's cool.